All right, today for your Wednesday at home lesson, you're going to be taking notes of the different parts of a speech. There are three parts to a speech. What I would like you to do is actually have a pen and or pencil and notebook paper out for this because this is something you'll use for all the speeches that you write, specifically the parts of an introduction, because that is all written out. So I will go through mainly just the introduction right now. We'll talk about outlining later. So this is parts of mostly an introduction. Okay, so three parts to every speech. We have the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. And we're going to focus on the introduction today. The introduction has four parts. So every time you write an introduction for one of your speeches, you're going to always start with an attention getter, and you're going to have credibility and audience relevance somewhere in that introduction. And then you always end with a thesis statement, which if you've written papers before, you know exactly what a thesis statement is. The thesis statement is what you're going to be writing about, or in this case, talking about in your speech. Okay. Audience relevance and credibility can fall anywhere within the introduction. Attention getters and thesis statements are always going to be in their specific spots. Attention getter will be the first part of the introduction. Thesis will be the last part of the introduction. So list those four things. You can pause the video when you want. I'm going to go through it. Feel free to pause when you need to take the notes. What is the purpose of the attention getter? It's exactly what it says. It's to grab your attention, to hook your audience, gain contact with the audience, grab their attention, and get them interested. Make them want to listen. Make them wonder, what is she going to talk about? What is he going to talk about? Make them excited about it, and make them think or look forward to listening to your speech. So hook the audience by grabbing their attention with that attention getter. Now, a lot of people just assume that attention getter will be one sentence. Not at all. You can certainly have 3 or 4 sentences for an attention getter. I prefer that because then you are forcing the audience to wonder and think about what it is you're going to be focusing on. The different types of attention getters. The first one is quotes or quotations, whatever you want to call it. The use of a direct quote said by someone of importance or whose words are worthy, insightful, and relative to the topic. You know what a quote is. Obviously, you're supposed to put quotation marks around it and also cite who said it. Once you cite that, then obviously you often will also have a works cited page. Now, if this is something, for example, our first speech, we're going to be talking about ourselves, and maybe we quote something our parents always say. Well, if it's a quote your parents always say, as long as you just put it in quotation marks and you say, this is something my mom always says, okay? That's a little bit different than having a works cited page. So here's just a couple examples of quotes. H.G. Wells once said, the past is but the beginning of a beginning. Or in the words of JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You don't have to write these examples down because I think based on what you know about quotes, you probably don't need the examples. Number 2, shocking, startling statements. These are just using a startling, exactly what it says, or shocking statement or a statistic and make some bold statement to catch people's attention. So the big thing with these and with any attention getter, a lot of it is all in how you say it. So an attention getter can be wonderful because of what is being said and how it's being said. But it can also be pretty boring and not very attention-getting if all you're doing is saying something like this. More than 3,800 young drivers ages 15 to 20 are killed every year. Okay, if you start a speech out like that, mumbling and not really putting emphasis on it, doesn't really grab the audience's attention. But if I say more than 3,800 young drivers ages 15 to 20, that's your age and a little bit older, are killed every single year. That has more impact the way that you say it. Or this one, more than 326,000 young drivers are injured every single year. So it's all on how you say it and also the eye contact that you make. Challenge, I keep having to move my face here, you guys. I'm sorry. I'll move over here to this left corner, see if that works a little better. Challenging questions, series of rhetorical questions. So rhetorical questions can be great if you combine them with other rhetorical questions or you combine them with something else, another type of attention getter. I often will do like a personal story and then add a question at the end of it. Some students, I feel like rhetorical question, if you're just asking a rhetorical question, oftentimes just a kind of a cop out attention getter. So these are just questions that are meant to not be answered. They stimulate the audience to think about your topic. So if you just ask one quick question, it doesn't always work. It's not really attention grabbing. So if I just say, if I'm going to make brownies for a demonstration speech, for example, I say, who likes brownies? And that's your rhetorical question. I do. That's not very exciting, not exciting at all. If you add it with a story, or you add it with multiple questions, like when I was young, we used to make these brownies or these cookies with my grandmother. Talk about the story, and then say, how many of you have ever made something special with your grandparent? Something like that. Add a little bit more to it to make it more exciting. And again, how you say it helps. Number 4 is humor. Humor can be wonderful if it's the appropriate topic for it. You don't want to use humor where it's not appropriate. It has to relate to the subject, and it's got to be in good taste. It's got to be appropriate for the classroom, and it can't just be a random joke to grab the attention and then you go into your topic. It's got to somehow relate to your topic. If you question it, then just don't do it. You don't want to offend anybody, and you don't want me to get upset. Number 5, attention capturing incident. This really can be a personal experience. So if you're thinking of a personal story, you can certainly write a personal story that leads into the body of your speech. A lot of you will probably use personal story with a combination of maybe humor or a combination of a rhetorical question for your all about me speech that we do first. So it could be an anecdote, which is a personal story, often humorous, that draws the audience in. And it could just be an experience that they can relate to. Okay, you can make up a story. Do I really know? Or it could be a narrative, which is a story relative to the topic that may not be a personal story. So again, think about what would capture the audience's attention or bring them in. Number 6 is visual or audio aid. For our first speech, we're going to be using a visual aid, but I'm not going to allow, that won't be your attention getter. You'll just be using a visual to help introduce yourself. But could you start out with something within your slideshow? For sure. But the one thing about a visual is that it's got to be reinforced with your first words, and there's got to be some transition in there to connect it all together. It's really easy to throw a song in a slideshow, but if you just start with a song and you don't connect it to anything, kind of like a quote, what's the point in that? Okay. So visual or audio aid, we'll definitely be using a lot of those this trimester if we're behind the screen. And then I threw 7, 8, and 9 all together. So one of my favorite ones is 7 because 7 can, no, not 7, I'm sorry, number 9, because it can be used with so many other attention getters. I'm going to 9. Suspense, which is where you withhold your topic for a minute or two and make the audience think about it, what it might be. Like you don't actually tell them right away, but you kind of withhold that topic to get them thinking and make them want to know what's happening, put them on the edge of their seat. Number 7 is an immediate issue or a challenge or reference to a recent event. For example, maybe the election, the political election, that definitely could be an issue that is brought up or something that could grab the audience's attention, certainly if it's a persuasive assignment. Personal reference or greeting. This is often for a special occasion speech. We probably will do a special occasion speech based on what I'm thinking. These basically are honoring or remembering someone, like a eulogy, or it could be a toast at a wedding. So those are just a couple of examples. Or if you are a valedictorian or the guest speaker for some award. Okay, so a lot of different options for number 8. You'll use that probably if you do a reference to an occasion. All right, so parts of an introduction. The first part, which again, you can put wherever within your introduction, is the credibility. Credibility is the amount of trust and belief the speaker inspires in the audience. So you have to be knowledgeable about the topic. It has to be something you know about, and you have to kind of prove that it's something you know about. Well, your first speech is all about you. Well, you should know all about you, and just in your introduction alone, that your credibility will be there, because your credibility can be part of your thesis statement. It's the level of knowledge or expertise the speaker has related to the topic. So if I'm not as credible as a doctor if I'm talking about lung cancer, for example. A doctor is going to have more knowledge of that than I will. But to show my credibility, I might talk about how I had been researching the topic for a couple of weeks and learned a lot about it. Or maybe I have a relative who was sick with lung cancer. Okay. And I was there to watch what happened, and I went and visited and talked to the doctors. A lot of that could be established credibility. The audience is not likely to listen to a speaker who they feel lacks credibility. So if you are just kind of talking out your ear and you have no credibility in what you're talking about, it's really hard to believe somebody when they don't really know what they're talking about. Then we have audience relevance. So how can you relate this topic to your audience? What's in it for them? Okay. So how do you bring them in to get them to really put effort into listening to you? So tell how the topic relates or is important to them. Link the topic to their interests or concerns. Why should they listen to you, and how does it concern or relate to them? So audience relevance might be if I'm let's say I'm making cookies with my grandmother, and in my introduction, I introduce or put my attention getter, and within there, I ask a question: how many of you have a special relationship with your grandmother? And that right there brings your audience in. Or maybe not your grandmother, but maybe with a relative or a parent who you care about. So that could easily be an example of audience relevance. Connect it to them in some way. So really think about that. Sometimes you put audience relevance in there and you don't even realize it until you reread your introduction. So what I would do is write your introduction with your attention getter and your thesis and see where that audience relevance and that credibility can fall. And it really is certainly dependent on the topic. The thesis statement is exactly like you would probably see in a paper. In our thesis statements, we're going to try to focus on three main points, because then we'll have three sections for our topic, or specifically if I'm looking at our All About Me speech. I have three main points, which means I'm going to talk about three different things about me. So I might talk about my family, my work life, and my hobbies. And so, therefore, I'd write a thesis statement that supports those three things. So it identifies the topic and the purpose of the entire speech. So the purpose might be to inform, to persuade, or to suit a special occasion. Well, I'm just informing you about my family, my work, and my hobbies. I don't have to say the word inform, though. I'm just going to share with you. Name main points when 3 points are required. So if there's 3 points required, if you can get those 3 points in there. Otherwise, if it's too much, then just make it one vague thesis statement. Okay. Thesis should make a general statement about the purpose of the speech when more than 3 main points are covered. So you don't want it to become wordy. And if it starts to become wordy, it's probably just better to make a general statement about what you're going to be talking about. Try to avoid saying, I'm going to be talking about. There's a better way to present a thesis statement. So this is what you're going to do for practice. And this is actually, the assignment is going to be attached in Google Classroom. So you actually can see it there, and you can do the assignment right on that same sheet. You're going to choose 3 points to share with the class about you. Not that this is going to be what you share, but this will help you prepare for your first speech. So mine will be, it could be family, hobbies, friends, school, work, etc. Anything that makes you you. Once you have chosen 3 main points, write a thesis statement. It's sometimes better to write the thesis statement first, even though the thesis statement is going to be the last sentence in your introduction. That way you at least have an idea of what your focus is. So without my family, my jobs, and my hobbies, my life would be uneventful. So yeah, obviously it would be uneventful if I didn't have those 3 things. I wouldn't have anything to do. So Obviously, I'm going to write about my family or talk about my family, my jobs, and my hobbies. Do you see how I wrote my thesis statement? I didn't just say, today I'll be talking about my family, my jobs, and my hobbies. You can make it a little bit better by rewording it. Now think of an attention getter you could use to get your audience's attention. Can you combine a narrative and a rhetorical question to bring your audience in? What about a quote or a recent event that connects to your topic? Go to the next slide to see your assignment. And again, this is in Google Classroom. So this is what you're going to see in Google Classroom on a Google Doc. It tells you, now that you've thought about a thesis statement and an attention getter, write a full introduction, making sure to include the following. So make sure that when you write your attention getter at the beginning, it can, like I said, it can be multiple sentences. Right after you write that attention getter, in parentheses, put what type of attention getter. I want you to really think about that. So go through the attention getters and see, after you've written it, what type is it most like? Now, some of them you might be like, well, it could be this or this. Well, just choose one. No big deal. So you'll put in parentheses the type of attention getter. You could put AG and then put the type of attention getter. Then audience relevance can go anywhere in the introduction. So it might be part of your attention getter. And if it is, great. Wherever you connect with the audience, just put AR in parentheses after that. Your credibility, this can go anywhere in the introduction too. Most likely in this specific speech when we do it, your credibility will be the last sentence with your thesis. So because if I go back here, if I go back to my thesis statement, without my family, my jobs, and my hobbies, my life would be uneventful. I'm talking about my stuff, my things, the things that are important to me. So that right there, although it's my thesis, it's also my credibility. So I would put thesis and credibility there. Okay. So then label your thesis in parentheses after your thesis. Label each part in parentheses where it occurs in the introduction. Identify which kind the attention getter is, and then write that and post it in Google Classroom. Let me just go to Google Classroom quickly because I want to make sure that, sorry. I may have asked you, actually, no, I have it right here. Okay, I am going to have you write 2 introductions. This is why. I want you to write 2 introductions because I want you to see how to use the different attention getters. So the big thing is a lot of your introduction might be the same with the exception of, you know what, I'm going to try a couple different attention getters. The more you manipulate that first introduction, the more likely your second introduction will be better. You can use a variety of rhetorical questions if you feel like that might work. But you can use a combination of the other attention getters too. So that doesn't mean that your thesis statement won't be the same in both, but I just really want you to think about it and come up with the best possible introduction. So I'll have you write 2, and then I'll choose the one that I think, or we will as a class choose the one that we think is better for a speech. Okay? So that is your at-home learning for Wednesday. Good luck. And if you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Okay? Have a great day. Bye.